Hello, welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, the podcast where I talk to comedians about what comedy really means to them. Free therapy with worse hours, turning childhood issues into crowd work, and needing strangers to like you. Each episode cracks open the stories behind the laughs, the bombs, and the why did I say that moments. I'm the comedy nerd who's seen more than 2,000 different comedians perform live comedy, and you can find out more about my journey in comedy fandom on my website, thecomedynerd.com. Please also take a moment to like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode originated from Canada, but is a rising stand-up comedian on the UK comedy circuit, known for her sharp, relatable humour and fearless stage presence. Already making an impact with her vox pop interactions, flawless stage performances, and brand new podcast, she brings fresh energy, quick thinking, a sometimes acerbic wit, but always a warm, incisive voice to every set. It's comedian Cheryl Hurst. So I always start at the beginning about what comedy was to you growing up. Was it a big influence on you in the family or television?
Television definitely was. I watched so much TV as a kid. I watched Friends was the show that I started watching really young, and my parents didn't let me watch it. And I had to sneak downstairs to watch Friends. I watched just a lot of those kinds of sitcoms, like Friends. Seinfeld was never on. But King of Queens, those kinds of comedy sitcoms. Mm-hmm. I was obsessed with those when I was a kid. I didn't know stand-up existed. I definitely didn't know stand-up was a thing. My parents never watched SNL. We didn't watch any of those kinds of shows. Right. But my parents were always into entertainment. So we played charades as kids. I was in improv classes. We always had comedy around us, but I did not know it was a professional activity.
Right. Yeah. I've had Canadian comics on before who've made their comedic lives in the UK. Did you not find stand-up as being present even growing up before you came to the UK as a big presence in Canada?
Definitely not. Certainly not where I grew up. There was a lot of improv. I think we were really influenced by Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Right, yeah.
Do you know that show? Mm-hmm. And there's the famous Canadian is on that show. So we watched Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I did drama classes where I was auditioned for Whose Line Is It Anyway Kids. Okay. And I was on that and toured a little bit around Toronto and stuff. Mm-hmm. Which is still, at the time it was such a big deal, but it was probably in front of 20 people. Mm. But no, I didn't actually know stand-up even existed. I think the first time I ever knew of stand-up, I would have been a teenager.
Okay. So what was that then? What brought it to your awareness? That's a weird thing to say. What made you aware of it?
I know it is. As bad as it is, I honestly think it was social media. I think it may have even been Vine. Okay. Those kinds of clips. Yeah. And seeing that and realizing, and it wouldn't have been stand-up clips. It would have been short form sketch. Mm. But that would have been the first time that someone would have said, oh yeah, that's a professional comedian. Mm. Whereas I always thought before they were professional actors who did comedy. Right. I never knew there was the actual medium of stand-up comedy until I was a teenager. Yeah. And I think laughter was always a big part of Canadian life, but certainly not stand-up comedy in my friend group or my parents. It was never like that. Yeah.
So you took the route into academia. You said about doing improv classes and things like that. Were they still a big part of it, or were they just sort of something small, a little sort of side diversion?
Definitely side diversions. I wanted to go into acting when I was younger. I did a lot of auditions. I did various different things to be an actor is what I always wanted to do. And my parents basically said, listen, we'll pay for you to go to university, but not if you study acting. And I think that was fair enough at the time. I was quite, I was, certainly good at it and I was getting parts, but I was not committed. I wasn't super hardworking. Right. And then I went to university for psychology and I was friends with all the musical theater kids and realized I did not want to do musical theater. And I did not want to be a musical theater kid. And so I think I separated myself from that as much as possible. And I started going to stand-up shows in my undergrad, more like speakeasies. You'd see some stand-up, you'd see some music, you'd see some poetry. Yeah. And I started doing that a bit more, but I definitely wasn't doing much myself. I was doing a lot of writing. Mm-hmm. I thought I would write a sitcom. So I was writing a book. I was writing a sitcom all throughout my undergrad and then my master's as well.
Yeah. So obviously I know you as a stand-up. You're a baby comedian, a baby stand-up.
I'm a baby comedian.
So where did stand-up come from? When did stand-up become a thing? Was it pre-moving to the UK or was it that recent?
A little. So let me think on that answer. I had told somebody when I was 19, when I was doing my undergrad, that I was going to do stand-up comedy. I remember being in a bar. I was at this place called McCabe's in Guelph, Ontario, and somebody said, "Oh, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian." And I'd never done it before. It was just kind of this like fun lie I told at a bar. Like I used to tell people I did physics. Like you just, when you meet particularly men, you just say whatever you want. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian." And I remember him being like, "Oh yeah, you'd be good at that." And I was like, "Oh." And it was kind of the first time I'd like voiced that idea out loud. And I really did want to do it. And then I moved to the UK at 21. So I moved a couple of years later, and I started going to stand-up comedy. I started writing, like I had the notes in my phone were all jokes that I wanted to tell. And then I started my master's, did my master's. I started doing a lot of public speaking during my master's. So I developed like a professional keynote, and some of those jokes went into that keynote. I did my PhD. Some of those jokes went into my keynote. I started doing a lot more of them around different companies. And I thought that would maybe scratch the itch. And then I still just wanted to perform. I just wanted to be in front of people. And it was around maybe 3 years ago, I did a keynote for Deloitte. And I told a few too many jokes. And the guy that booked me came up after and said, "Hey, I think you're really funny. You're really smart, but you really need to find a different outlet for some of what you say." And that was when I was like, okay, I need to do stand-up comedy. I can't keep like pretending I don't want to. I have to just do it. And it was this businessman at Deloitte who was like, "Yeah, this is inappropriate." I can tell you the exact joke as well that I know that he said was not right. I was at my PhD was in behavioral science, and I focused on like gender inequality specifically and people's roots through various different careers. And I made a joke. I said, "Oh yeah, my husband and I are married. I'm 30, no kids, a few close calls, but we made it." I guess that was just inappropriate for a forum of, I think it was called like Women at Work. Fair enough.
So having had this close call with comedy, what was the first real live stand-up gig for you?
My first real stand-up gig was Leslie Gold's Sofa So Funny.
Yeah.
That was my first ever. I had done the like showcase because I did a course through City Academy.
Okay.
And I got a video from that.
Yeah.
And then I sent it to, I think, Leslie, and Leslie put me on Sofa So Funny. I don't even think she knew. I tried to pretend. I think it's so funny when you first start out, you're like, "Oh, I'm not going to tell anybody I'm new." And then you look back and you're like, "Oh, they knew. They knew that you were." And they still know. They still know.
That being your first gig then, I mean, showcase aside, when you're performing to basically friends and family of people you've been on the course with, that first sort of live outlet, how was that for you?
Okay, this is going to sound so cheesy, and I don't want that, but I feel like it was, I remember getting off stage and for the very first time in my life feeling like that was what I was supposed to feel like. I loved every second of it. I was like, this is what I have been looking to feel for so long. Like the keynotes were great because they liked it and I was getting to talk to them. But I remember not feeling that way since like the when I was in a play when I was a kid. It was perfect. It was exactly, and I have not stopped since because I just loved it so much. And I think partly because I had been on stage so much in like a professional capacity, I wasn't that nervous. I knew how to handle a microphone.
Yeah.
I knew that if I was just confident enough, people would think I knew what I was doing and then they would relax. So then even if my jokes weren't that funny, they were like, "Oh, she's not that funny, but at least she's not sad."
So you say that that's the way you wanted to feel, but was it what you expected to feel? Was it a surprise to you what comedy actually meant doing it?
I think I was worried that it wasn't going to be everything I had wanted it to be. I think because I had, it'd been almost like 15 years that I'd been building up this thing in my head of something I wanted to do, pushing it away. And I think a lot of people do this, and that I have this like dream that I wanted. And if I didn't do it, maybe I'd be okay. But what if I did it and it didn't feel like how it was supposed to? What if I still wasn't happy after finally doing this thing? And I was worried that would be the case, that I would get on stage and I'd be like, oh, actually, you know what? I'm not an Oscar winning actress. So this still isn't enough for me. But it was enough for me. I was like, this is what a great feeling to know that being on stage in front of 25 people is enough for me. I could do this forever.
But since then, you've played to bigger stages. You've supported bigger names in comedy. I mean, how quick was that turnaround, that change?
Very quick.
Yeah.
I'll be completely honest with you. I make a goal list every probably 6 months or so. I have a goal list, both like personal, professional.
Yeah.
And being on this podcast is on my goal list for like 2028. It is far. This is unreal. You're like, you know, I'm a fangirl. I think that's how we met, was like, I've listened to your podcast. I've listened to every single episode. Like yours was the first podcast I ever listened to. This is my Live at the Apollo. It's been unreal. I do think it's so funny. For a long time, I've been really hard on myself and down on myself. And I still it still happens where I'm upset that I didn't start earlier. You know, you see these people who are so successful that started when they were even 25 and they just have 5 years on me, or, you know, they just started when they were much younger. And it's like, oh, if I'd started younger, you know, I'd be so much farther ahead. I'd be doing so much better. But then I also think being a bit older, and it's not necessarily age, but having a bit more life experience has also allowed me to go a bit faster because I have more material that I can talk about because I've experienced more life than like a 21-year-old who's like, oh, hey, I just went through a breakup. Yeah. And now I don't know what to do. And it's like, listen, you're going to be fine. You're 21. Or even just like the skills that I have in terms of, I'll never be late for a gig. I always respond to emails. I understand the complexities of running an event. Like there's things that I think you get when you've been around the block a little bit more. Not that I'm old, but certainly older than a 21-year-old comedian. So I think there's benefits. I'm trying to think of the benefits of like waiting too long, and that there's good parts of being a bit older and when you start. Yeah. It is wild to me that 30 is old.
Well, I was about to say
comedy, but it is. It is. It is for, I think you can start at any age, but
yeah. But I mean, that's one of the things that grinds my gears when people in their 30s go, oh, life is so hard. I'm so old and decrepit. And they go, come on, give it another 20 years and then talk to me.
Yeah. If anything, 30 has taught me that life is grand.
Yeah.
Like when you're in your 20s and everything feels so hard. and then I like, you look back and you're like, you have no idea.
What about the person you are on stage? Did you have a stage persona in mind of who that person was going to be? Is that person you, or is it different from you? Is that a character of you?
I went through a lot of different styles that I tried very early on. So when I started, I was doing 4 or 5 open mics a week. I went very hard, very fast. Like since my first one, I went hard, and I would try to do something different at every show. So it was either I had to try new material, or I had to try a different persona. And I would try, the really big, like Michael McIntyre. I'd like walk across the stage and use really loud, weird voices. I tried, I definitely tried the Catherine Ryan of like talk about gossip and celebrity stuff, which I had no idea what I was talking about. And then there was a point where I think I was watching Chicago, the movie, and I was like, oh, what if I was just really creepy? Tried that a couple times. I didn't like how much that worked, but I was just like this creepy girl. And I kind of all of that ironed out to what I think is very much me. I think on stage, I'm a bit meaner than I am in real life, because I do have a lot of comics who will say like, oh, I didn't know if you'd be nice. And I think because my jokes are quite sharp, I think partly because I'm not as good a joke writer yet as I will be eventually. And hopefully eventually I'll soften those out and they'll be a bit less, punching out and a bit more internal. But definitely on stage, that meanness does exist in me in the sense that I do make fun of things that I love. I make fun of things like that's, I think, very Canadian as well, where we don't take ourselves too seriously. We don't take anything too seriously. So I think I'm very much myself, but probably a bit meaner on stage than I am in real life.
Yeah. Well, what about that cultural difference then between the way comedy is received or the way people interact in Canada versus the way that they do in the UK. I mean, how has that affected your comedy? How has that, what you've encountered from other comedians, how has that changed your perspective, if at all?
Definitely took me a really long time to learn that Canadian and British culture were so different. And as a Canadian, I think we struggle to sometimes identify our own identity because we're only compared to Americans or we're only compared to British people. And it's taken me a really long time. I've been in the UK for 11 years. It's taken me a really long time to realize the parts of me that are because of my Canadian culture, which I do think is that we don't take ourselves too seriously. We are friendly and fun, but we have that sharpness of, I think, the Brits, that satirical, kind of playful sarcasm that Americans don't really have as much. You don't have as much satirical comedy. You'd have more physical comedy and like really in your face comedy that you see in their sitcoms versus the stuff that we have here.
Yeah.
And Canada is kind of a mix of both of those. Very satirical. I think the thing that I've noticed that I didn't know was so different is how confrontational I am. And certainly on stage, I'm very confrontational. You know, so a woman spilled her drink the other night and I literally just turned and I was like, security, get her out of here. and like the British audience, like I thought everyone would laugh. A few people did. And then the Brits were like, oh, wait, is she serious? And I was like, no, of course not. Like, what part of my vibe do you think I want to kick out this woman for spilling her drink?
What about keeping yourself entertained? Do you keep in like jokes that you think are funny to you, even if they don't land, or do you have like a little in joke? How do you keep yourself amused and keep you going?
I have, I think, strong feelings about this. I think at the end of the day, comedians are there to entertain the audience. And if you have stuff that doesn't work and you think is funny, it is your job to make other people think it's funny. So I wouldn't selfishly keep things in. But there's certainly things that I know will only work with maybe 50% of the audience or less. And then I will continue to try to make it work for everybody. But if it didn't and I really loved it, I would.
Yeah.
My entertainment comes from making, this sounds so cheesy. My entertainment comes from making other people laugh. Like if they're laughing, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that I would ever keep in. I'm trying to think of anything that I would keep in that is just for me. But I don't think there is. I just want other people to laugh.
Yeah.
All the time.
Well, how about then watching comedy when you're not performing comedy? How about comedy to entertain you? What about watching other comedians? Can you do that? Are you analytical now or are you still lost in the moment?
I think I'm really lucky in that I can still watch a lot of comedy. I know a lot of comics that can't. I watch specials pretty much every day. I watch a special. I transcribe them as well. So I type them out and then I'll see where do they get the laugh? Why do they get this laugh? What kind of joke is this? And I still like, there's some that I can transcribe and I'm paying attention to. And then there's some where I notice that I've just sat there and enjoyed it. And I'd be like, oh, there's no way I'm going to transcribe this. I'm laughing too hard. I can still really enjoy comedy and I enjoy the analytics of it. And I'm very new in my career. So I think, ask me again in 10 years, I might be like, I'm so done with it. But there's still comedy that I listen to over and over and over again that I'm so entertained by. And the thing I probably hate most about myself is how much I laugh out loud at puns. Even like on the open mic circuit, if a comic has a good pun, I will laugh so hard. And they sometimes think that I'm being sarcastic. And I'm like, no, that was 100% natural reaction to that pun. And I hate myself for it.
I mean, it's interesting that if you watch a comedian who is like a storyteller, like a long form performer, and they throw in the pun and it's kind of out of nowhere, it's very jarring. And it kind of forces the audience into one of two ways. Either they so surprised by it that they just laugh out loud, or you get that groan and then the performer is then forced to go, come on, that's a great joke.
Yeah. I love that when a comic says, come on, that's a great joke. It's like, give us a minute to get it. Give us a minute.
So I've seen you do a split bill this year. You're with Callum Kenzie. So 30 minutes each for people who don't know to make up the hour. How was your Fringe experience? How was taking that show up with Callum? And what did you anticipate from it? What did you get from it?
So I'll start with Callum is an incredible comic. He's been going a little bit longer than me and has this repertoire of jokes that's just unbelievable. He's so funny and so quick. And so when he asked me to do a split bill, my first thought was like, are you kidding with me? Absolutely. I was so honored and nervous. That was like the first time that I was like, I really didn't want to let him down. I really didn't want it to be half an hour of people loving him and laughing at his jokes, and then half an hour of them being like, why is he paired up with her? And so that was the first time I really had to step up. And Fringe was the best experience I could have asked for, because I went in with very low expectations. My only expectation was, I don't want to embarrass Callum, which he's such a nice guy and he's so British. Even if I did embarrass him, he'd never tell me. Right? So I was really lucky because I went in with a split bill. It was a really small room. I had saved up money, so I wasn't trying to make money, which I think reduces a lot of the pressure. I had saved up enough to know, like, this is my budget. This is how much I'm spending. Yeah. And that was fine. And so anything we made on top of it reduced some stress. Anything that happened on top of that split bill was just added fun. And I was able to jump on a few spots of the Best of Canada. I jumped on a few other spots. And so everything was just like extra cherries on top of what was already a great time, which I feel like is not a common thing for comedians to say about Fringe, because I know a lot of people have a tough time. But because our expectations were pretty much zero, everything was a win. Yeah. It was just the best experience of my life. It was a whole month that I got to see people every day, talk about comedy all the time, write jokes whenever I could. Yeah. Did I embarrass Callum? There were definitely some days I did. But more or less, I think I held my own all right. Yeah. And I'm back again this year.
So that would be, what, is that another split, a 45? Where are we going from here?
I'm doing a full 40 this year. Yeah. So I'm doing 40 minutes, and then I'll have an opener. So it'll be very much like a work in progress. And again, I'm just hoping, my goal is just not to embarrass myself. Or at least if I do, at least the audience is laughing. That's, that.
Yeah. Then the normal path of it is you do a 30, you do a 40, 45, maybe a little longer. And then ultimately you're going to debut with your hour. Does that weigh on you, that expectation from the industry that you will do the big debut hour? And how heavy is that word, debut?
I think a lot of people believe that pressure is on them to do things, and the pressure isn't actually there. So I plan to debut in 6 years. And if I'm not ready, you can do 10 years. You can, like, there's nobody telling you have to debut right now. And you also don't have to debut. If you look at some people who are incredibly successful, they've built their own path. I think the industry has changed so much that when you really look at it, debuting is wonderful. Getting nominated is great. I was able to tech this year for Roger O'Sullivan, who was nominated for Best Newcomer. And it's certainly changed the trajectory of his career. Do I want that? Of course. No comic's going to be like, oh, I want to debut and get no recognition. But if you don't get that, you then see comics like, Vittorio Angeloni, or even Reese Kidd, who's another great comic. His debut, I don't think, had like this, spectacle around it, but he's still touring and doing an incredible, having an incredible career. Or if you look at the American comics, some of my favorite comics, like Beth Stelling, I don't think she's ever even been to Edinburgh Fringe. You don't have to have a career that looks the way everyone else's looks in order to be successful. You have to have the career you want. So the things that I want in my career, I do need to have a good debut. I think I do. My dream would be to work with Monkey Barrel and to be a Monkey Barrel comic. And that they're more likely to pick people that have successful Edinburgh Fringe debuts. And so that's something that I'm working towards. But if it doesn't work out, there's other ways to have a successful career. Yeah. So it weighs on me, but not every day. It's just like a thing that I have to work towards. And if it doesn't work out, you change your path. You have different ways of achieving your goals. Yeah. All of this makes me sound like an asshole, I've realized. I don't feel a lot of pressure. I'm not like an anxious person. Yeah. I don't feel anxiety about this kind of thing. Yeah. There's definitely other things that I feel anxiety about, but this kind of thing, it's like you can build so much of your own career now and do so much of what you want to do. And I'm seeing it. I have friends who are doing it right now who are not doing what the industry dictates you have to do, and they're doing so well. Yeah. At Fringe this year, you did some Vox Pops on the street with other comedians, interviewing them about friendship. Yeah. What was the feedback you got from recording those videos, and how have they been received? So First, there's going to be more. I'm going to go into Clapham on a Saturday night and record people about friendship. So that's going to be hopefully fun. They came about because I'm not great at interviewing people. And I know that through various forms of my life and interviewing. And I needed to get better and be more creative. I'm just not very creative in my day job. And so I wanted to be more creative. But I've always wanted to talk about friendship. I've been married for, 2 years, 3 years. We've been together for 8 years. And, when I met my husband, within 2 weeks, we were like, we're getting married. So I've been in a very happy, steady relationship for a long time. And so the romance side of comedy, which is lots of people talk about breakups and love and their partners, I've never really connected that much with that content and with that kind of information. Right. But I have, because I moved around so much. I live in a different country to my best friends. When you meet people as an adult, they already have best friends. And then I was listening to, let's say, Giggly Squad, or My Therapist Ghosted Me, and all these podcasts that are particularly women talking to their best friend. And I really wanted that. Yeah. And I was like, how do you get a best friend? I need to find a best friend so I can make a podcast. And this was 3 years ago. I was like, I need to get a best friend so we can start a podcast. And then I just got this idea of what if I asked people how to make a friend and how to be a better friend? And that is how those kinds of conversations went, where I was like, what if I just go and ask people, what is friendship to you? What does friendship mean? Let's talk about friendship. And it really was just to get out of this idea of talking only about romantic relationships, which are, we know, less important than friendships when it comes to longevity. Women who have best friends live longer than women who get married to men. So that's kind of how it all came about, was I don't have a best friend and I want one. And my hope is that I'm going to find a random person on the street who's like, I don't have a best friend either. And they're going to be normal and we're going to become best friends. But those videos have been really well received. I think probably my favorite was I asked on the street, if I had a party at 8:00, what time would you show up? And on TikTok, this got 1 million views or something, and people arguing in the comments about what time they'd show up. And in my mind, it's you show up at 7:50 and you circle the block and you're there at exactly 8 p.m., if not earlier. And most people were like, you don't show up to a party that starts at 8 until at least 11 or midnight.
What?
That's just totally different lives to me. This is why I don't have a best friend.
Well, obviously that follows on then to the podcast, Cheryl's Best Friend Group Chat. Tell me all about that.
It's silly. I wanted to do something really silly. Again, it's one of those things I should have done a long time ago when I had the idea, but I didn't. And now it's just two people chatting to see if we're compatible as best friends. And I think you'll hear from the first 2 episodes, I haven't yet found a best friend. I think I'm starting to see the common denominator is me. But it is good fun. It is just meant to feel, the podcast is meant to feel like you're just listening to 2 people kind of getting to know each other and having a laugh. I just want people to listen and just giggle, really, just enjoy themselves. I think a lot of the stuff in the world is so serious. And I'm kind of done with learning. I listen to a lot of learning podcasts and I'm like, I'm just so done listening to this person talk about their book. I just want to listen to fun things and interesting things. Yeah. So the first few episodes were definitely me getting to know how to interview people. And now I'm like, all right, I need this. These clearly need some structure. And, what do you look for in a friend? Why are you friends with your friends? What do you enjoy about friendship? And those are the kinds of questions that I want to talk about a bit more. And then also hear people's funny friendship stories. I think for every funny dating story, most people have a friend who was there for it. So if I think when I was a teenager and there was a boy that I liked, and you'd start talking about my relationship with him, but actually I remember my friend driving me to his house where he was having a party. We got out of the boot of the car so that the lights wouldn't go on, and then army crawled across his lawn to look in the window to watch him and the lads playing poker. And that relationship with my best friend at the time is so much more interesting than my relationship with this boy. The fact that she, I didn't even have to ask her. I was like, oh, I want to go and spy on them at this poker party. And she was like, buckle up, we're getting in the car. I just think that's so much more interesting.
I mean, something I've talked about before is it's interesting that stories like that always happen to people who are the best place to be on stage talking about them. So what is it that, I mean, you're a psychologist. What's your take on what is it that makes a comedian? What are those traits? What is it that you have? What is it about you that serves you well in being a comedian?
That's a great question. It's a very difficult question to answer. I always find what's really interesting is we don't know that much about personality. So, because my undergrad was in neuropsychology, and we don't actually know that much about what makes a personality or why personalities are the way they are. And I do think comedians just typically don't take anything too seriously, even though they think they do. Some comedians think they take things really seriously, but I think in your daily life, you have to be able to see something and just see the comedy in it. Just see like, oh, this could be funny.
Yeah.
And I think that just comes from a place that I can't explain. Even there are times where I'm in a meeting in my day job and I'll be sitting there and like, I'll see like above myself being like, this is ridiculous. Capitalism is ridiculous. This is so funny. How can you possibly be talking about shareholder value? You don't know anything. So I don't know what that is. I think there is something about just being able to see the joy in stuff and knowing what other people would find joyous in it. But I don't actually know what makes that. I think anybody has a good joke in them. Just like I think anybody has one good book in them. I think anybody has a few jokes in them they could write and perform on stage.
Yeah. Well, as we've talked about, you've done all these spots. You've done a 30. You're working on a 40. Are you happier, do you think, when you're doing those smaller spots, those punchy 5 or 10 minute segments, or when you've got more time to sort of spread your wings and talk for longer?
Right now, I think 15 is the sweet spot for me. I think a 15 is really nice because I can fit in material, but I can also do some crowd work.
Yeah.
Edinburgh Fringe definitely gave me crowd work skills. I was in such a small room that you had to be able to do crowd work. You had to talk to them and confront, like, okay, everybody in this room can see each other. Let's chit chat and get to know each other.
Yeah.
And that gave me a lot more like the improv skills. Same that I'm trying to work on with the interviews is just better improv skills.
Yeah.
And that, doing that in between material, and the audience obviously thinks it's all crowd work, right? They think that you're just coming up with it on the spot.
Yeah.
It's a little trade secret. We aren't. And that to and fro to then mix in with material, be able to go into material, then back to crowd work. For me right now works really well with a 15-minute. Especially when the audience has kind of come to see me. So not necessarily me personally, but they are expecting 2 comedians or they're expecting fewer comedians. When there's a whole bunch of people on the lineup, or when it's, when they've come to see somebody else and I just happen to be there, I notice that it's not, they're not necessarily as easy for me to get into their personalities and why they're here. I prefer writing for longer shows for sure. Because then you can write slightly longer stories. You can give a bit more context, write a few more jokes in the context that maybe aren't, the most hilarious jokes in the world, but they're still a bit funny.
Yeah.
Versus I think when it's a shorter set, you have to just be like, joke, 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 joke. I also struggle because I have to say that I'm Canadian.
Yeah.
So I kind of have to have a few jokes about being Canadian. In a long set, I can do, 4 minutes on Canada, why I love being Canadian, and then do a lot more material. Whereas if I only have 5-10 minutes, I still have to say that I'm Canadian because otherwise they're constantly wondering what part of America are you from?
Yeah.
And I wonder if she's a Trump supporter. There's all and I have to be like, listen, he's not ours. He's not one of ours. So yeah, I definitely prefer the longer sets because I can get into the groove a little bit. But I had a 5-minute set at Big Belly on Wednesday and I loved it. It was so nice to just do 5 minutes, have some fun and get out of there.
Yeah. Well, on that then, this notion of what makes a comedian, well, do you see yourself as a comedian? Do you call yourself comedian?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I know a lot of people think, oh, you can't be a comedian until you've done X amount or until you're a professional or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Come for me then, bro. I don't care. You can't be the title police. I don't care. So I do call myself a comedian. I think it's one of those things that's really good for me, it's really good for my mental health in terms of if I'm not a comedian, why am I working so hard at this? This isn't a hobby. I don't want it to be a hobby.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people don't want to necessarily admit that because maybe I think it's kind of embarrassing to try sometimes. People get embarrassed to admit that they're trying really hard at something. And I definitely have felt that. Whereas I am trying to be a comedian. I want to be a professional comedian. And not that you have to manifest it. But I think if I keep hiding away from that and saying, oh, I'm just going to see if it works out and maybe it won't. It's like, no, this is going to work out for me. I want this to be my career, whatever that looks like. What, not necessarily the way it's always looked, but in some form of being a comedian. And you kind of have to start now.
Yeah. Do you do that? Do you say like, right, I'm a comedian now, and to begin, go first gig, just do it? Or do you sort of edge in and say, well, I've done a few gigs, I think I'm a comedian now, I think I've done it?
I definitely think if people are unsure if it's what they want, they should give it some time to think about it, because otherwise it's a lot of commitment to make a career out of it, to not know for sure. Yeah. I think it's fine if it's your hobby. Like, absolutely, it is totally fine, and it should be a hobby if you want it to be a hobby. Or you can say you're a comedian and only perform, once a month. Go for it.
Yeah. But
you should definitely figure out how much you want to commit to it, because if you're going to be good, it's a lot of commitment.
Yeah. A lot. What do you think that you've learned so far? One important lesson, something that you would tell your the look of horror on your face. Only one lesson so far, maybe something you tell your younger comedian self, or advice you would give to someone following on behind you.
This is the worst you'll ever be. I think that's, like, I've had bad gigs, but even like my bad gigs in my first month were, this is the worst you'll ever be. It's not necessarily the worst show you'll ever have. You'll have bigger, worse shows. But in terms of you personally, your writing, your performance, as long as you keep working, you can only get better.
Yeah.
And the audiences that see you when you're early on, they're not going to remember you. Like, no one's going to be like, oh, I saw her bomb at Edinburgh Fringe in front of 6 people. Who cares? And even if they do, they'll love it. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I saw that woman like so long ago. She was horrible. I always try to remember that it's just my job to get better. And that's something Callum McKenzie and I have talked about a lot, is we only want to get better. And so when we give each other feedback, when we say like, no, that joke's not funny, here's how I would do it, here's what you could do instead, the goal is just for us to get better.
Yeah. And
that has to be in your mind all the time. And I think if I had told my younger self, or like earlier self, that in my career, I would have been like, no, I'm so good. This is the best. And then I like watch back videos of myself and I'm like, what? That's not even remotely funny.
You said about making and revising targets for yourself every 6 months. Do you have long-term targets? Do you have sort of things on that list that are where you want to be in 5 years, in 10 years?
Yeah, I did some work with Amanda Baker, a woman who she's directed some really big names, Jimmy Carr, Judy Love, Sean Walsh. And she essentially helped me form this like comedy goals workbook almost. And there were things for me to work on every month. So I listed things like, okay, this month I want to work on my voice and how I project my voice, how I use my voice. I'm trying to lower my voice a little bit. The Canadians often go up, so everything sounds like a question. And I'm trying not to do that. It's hard. And then, so that's something that I'll work on for maybe a month, and then it compounds. So then the next month I'm trying to use the stage better. So use the stage more purposefully instead of what I do now, which is wander around aimlessly. So there's those like compounding month on month. And then long term, I have a 3, 5, 10-year goals that I want to work towards. And then if I'm not there, what then? And there's ones that are huge reaches. I think every comedian in the UK wants to be on Taskmaster. Right? Like no one's going to turn that down. Very likely by the time I'm ready to be on Taskmaster, it's not going to exist anymore. Right? Like unless they're on like season 120. But it's that kind of thing that like absolutely. So there's those kinds of goals. There's ones that I can control and things I can't. I can't control if I'm on Taskmaster, but you can control the steps that hopefully get you there. And you can see, what kind of agent do you have to be with? How many credits do you need to have? What do you need to do? All that kind of stuff to get to those goals. Yeah. So I have all of those for short and long form. And I think it just focuses the mind a little bit.
Yeah.
I also have a goal of because I feel like I sound like all I care about are like material items. I also have goals of the types of jokes I want to be able to talk about and make people laugh about. And that's like, you know, for example, I know there's not a lot of comedians who do material on things like eating disorders because it's really difficult to talk about. Whereas I saw Helen Bauer and Alison Spittle both did shows on their eating disorders, and they were so funny and so incredible. And it's like, oh, I'd love to be able to talk about serious things like that in a way that makes people laugh. And I'm not there yet. So like, that's a goal that like, hopefully one day I'll be able to get to a point where I can talk about serious things in funny ways. So those kinds of goals are in there as well.
Yeah. Up until this point, despite your being a baby comedian with only a few years behind the mic, do you have examples of the best and worst experiences you've had through comedy so far?
Yes. It's easier to do the worst. I have two. I mean, I'm sure this is not rare. My absolute worst ever gig was at a gong show. It was up the creek. It was my 12th gig. I did not know it was a gong show. So I'd been on holiday. I showed up and they were like explaining the rules. And I was like, what? Because I was at a point where I was just submitting to everything. Anything that would take me, I was like, I'll just perform there. Absolutely. I was submitting to everywhere I could. And then, you have to keep up on the admin, but you just put it in your diary. I'm here at this time. I'll show up. I'll do my 5 minutes. I'll get out of there. Yeah. I show up and it's a gong show. And I was like, oh no. I hadn't mentally prepared. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't, in my mind, the gong shows all want like raunchy comedy. I had never been to a gong show. Like I'd never even seen one. Yeah. And I didn't have any raunchy comedy. So I got on stage and like had tried to change some of my jokes to be raunchy, but they obviously just didn't work. And I just sounded like such a jerk. And I could tell, I like at the 2-minute mark, because you have a 2-minute grace period, I could tell that the people with the paddles didn't want to vote me off because they felt bad for me. Like they were purely just like, these are pities that we're letting you try more. And then they were like, no, we're so sorry. Get out of here. And I think the reason that was so bad was because I don't know why I did it. Like, I don't know why I didn't. I think if I had just done my regular 5-minute set, I would have been better off. But for some reason, I had like changed everything and it didn't make any sense and it wasn't funny. And I think that just comes with time. Yeah. That was bad. But again, I survived. Yeah. You know, I did fine. Best experience in comedy. That's tough. I've had a lot of really good experiences. I've had a lot of really good like camaraderie from other comedians. And so I do love when you just have a bit of fun. I was able to do a show this year with Sarah Pascoe, and that was quite cool. And she like messaged me on Instagram afterwards, like, great performing with you. And I was like, thank you so much. You're like, great. So that was a lot of fun. And I was very nervous for that. I can't think of my best experience. I think honestly, there was a show in Edinburgh Fringe where I improvised the entire thing. It was for the Best of Canada. And I didn't do any material. I just talked with the audience and like did material in between. Yeah. And I remember getting off stage and texting Callum and saying, that was the best show I've ever had in my life. It was just so electric. There's like an electricity you can feel on stage when you're doing really well. Yeah. And I think like every single person that was in that audience followed me on Instagram that day, which I think is a good sign. Yeah. I had like, 20 followers in one day because of that Edinburgh Fringe like performance. Yeah. So that was definitely the time that I remember the most, getting off stage and thinking like, yes, that was it. That was fun. Yeah. You said that about doing the Gong Show. What about your competitive side? Do you have a competitive streak? You come across as very confident. Does that drive competitiveness? Yes. How do you feel about being in competition with your peers? I am dangerously competitive. Which is why I don't really do competitions or gong shows. I like competition, but I really, really need things to be fair, or else I can be really childish. I can give an example. I've done one competition. It was 5 minutes, but the 2 winners did 7 minutes each. Right. And it's like, if you're not going to follow the rules, you can't have competitions. But then other people are like, sure, I'll just relax. It's like, I can't relax because you gave me the rules and I followed the rules and now it's not fair. So I can be really childish like that. But I love competing. I love competing. I think competing is so much fun. Obviously, winning is fun, but I think competing is more fun than anything. I also have there's certain people who have told me that I won't be able to do something or that something's not going to work. And my competitive streak is like, well, watch me. But we'll see if that works out because I haven't actually done the thing they said I couldn't do yet. So we'll find out. But I'm definitely competitive.
Well, do you have on your goals list things like awards, particular accolades or titles that you look for?
Not typically accolades or titles. Maybe some accolades or titles. Goals are things like, when I want to debut. I want to debut. Goals like getting good reviews from certain forums, getting recognized by certain comedians. I'm trying to think I can't remember what was on my goal list for this year because I have obviously specific goals for different years. But there's also comedy related goals that don't feel like comedy related goals, followers on Instagram, social media things. Yeah. Recognition from certain people in the industry. I'd like to have an agent in 3 years, that kind of thing that are goals. The awards are nice. Of course, I want to win an Edinburgh Fringe Award. Like no comedian's going to say they don't want to. And if they do, I feel like they're probably lying to themselves. But I'd really like to be seen as generous by other comedians. I think that would be nice because I think there's a lot of comedians who are, and it's really easy to be very selfish in this industry. Yes. And like just make yourself look good and do things just for yourself. I'd really like to be seen as generous with my time and energy because there's other comedians that have been very generous to me, and I would hope to be a bit like them. And I don't think I am naturally a very generous person. Heidi Regan was one that is very generous with her time. Stuart Laws as well has always been very generous with his time. And it's those kinds of things that I'm like, I know people talk really, really well behind their backs. And I would like people to talk well behind my back.
So how can listeners find out all about you and where they can come and see you performing?
Instagram, Cheryl Hurst Comedy. Also, I have a YouTube channel. I don't use TikTok. I just can't figure it out. I think I have like 3 videos on there. It's so hard to get into a new social media platform, I think. But yeah, Instagram's definitely where I post everything.
Fantastic. So I'll end as I always do then with the title of the show. Cheryl, how would you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
I have thought about this so much and how I would answer this question when it eventually came to me. And I can tell you it's underwhelming, my answer. Because I believe that comedy, in a nutshell, comedy is meant to entertain. That is it. And some people, entertainment means feeling something. Sometimes entertainment is fart jokes. Sometimes entertainment is talking about grief. There's all different ways that entertainment can show up for people. And that's what comedy is. It's just meant to entertain you, whether it's laugh out loud, slapstick, or thinking about something. It's just meant to entertain, and it's our job as comedians to do that and make people laugh. So that's it. Underwhelming.
I think that's exactly the perfect amount of whelm. Cheryl, thank you so much for being my guest. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.